So I just read Jesus and the Disinherited yesterday, and someone was asking my thoughts on it, so I thought I would share. I first heard about this book back in 2017, which is fairly recently. I know I'm behind the times, but a friend of mine brought it into a seminar discussion that we were having at Biola's Center for Christian Thought on suffering. And the book was one that Martin Luther King Jr. carried with him, that he was always packing alongside his fresh shirts and his fresh underwear. And this was the other necessary item that he brought with him. It began as a talk given by Howard Thurman in 1935 called Good News for the Underprivileged. And now, of course, from the 1940s on, this has kind of been a staple text for what really is the story of Christianity for the disinherited. It's not a matter of just looking for the life to come, that the message of the Gospels is not only for those who are looking forward to heaven in the next life because they're experiencing hell in this one. As Thurman mentioned, his grandmother, who was formerly a slave, that was her view originally, and she thought that couldn't be right. It couldn't just be that we're experiencing hell here and a heaven later. What does it look like here for people who, as Thurman talks about them, have their back against the wall? At the time he's writing, he's specifically thinking of African Americans who have their back against the wall, who are continuing to try to live and to be Christians, and yet the Christianity that they feel they have inherited has come from slave owners, has come from those who are in power, those who are controlling the system, those who are not looking out for the disenfranchised. Those are the people who are representing Christianity. And yet Jesus himself is not one who only comes to speak to the powerful. In fact, the message of Thurman's book is that Jesus was a Jew in a Roman-occupied Palestine, and he is always thinking about those around him who are living without power. And those are the people that Jesus is speaking to about why his message is, in fact, good news. And so that's who Thurman himself finds to be his audience. He says it was the crucial question. Rome was the enemy. Rome was frustration. Rome was everywhere. And this is the position of the disinherited in every age. What must be the attitude toward rulers, the controllers of the political, social, and economic life? And he goes through different dispositions. He starts with fear, then he says hate, and then ends with love. Whereas fear and hate actually keep the disinherited trapped and enslaved. Only love frees them. Despite the confines put on them by the political and social powers, the freedom comes from living like Jesus and from being someone who loves. And this is the message of Thurman's book. And I think it's a message for those who find themselves in places of privilege, as well as those who find themselves on the margins, that the answer is always the same. The answer is love. And love is the greatest response that we can come up with. It is the response of Jesus, who loved so much that it took him to the cross. And it is the only way to actually be free from the hate and fear that you might have towards your enemies. I would highly recommend reading this book. I think it is one about liberation. For someone who teaches in the liberal arts, I couldn't help thinking about it from that standpoint. In what ways does the action of love, does cultivating an inner attitude, does focusing on how we see things and how we respond to things, how does that then affect how we act in the world? To quote Graham Greene, hate is a failure of the imagination. In what way does this book help us do more than a sermon, help us do what only an imaginative work can do, which is to change the way that we see ourselves and see the world and understand our role in it?